I'm currently on a cruise ship that never really slows down. There are shows happening everywhere, music playing constantly, families everywhere you look, and more things to do than anyone could realistically fit in a 3 or 4 days. This ship carries over 6,000 guests, and on a short sailing like this, the energy never really dips. I booked this cruise knowing all of that, and honestly, I wasn't sure it was a great idea. Short cruises are fast, big ships are busy, and to make it even more intense, this sailing happens to be over Christmas, and I wanted to make sure our family made core memories that will last a lifetime. So I kept wondering if I'd feel overwhelmed, or if we'd spend the whole trip chasing quiet corners to be together instead of just enjoying ourselves. Because on a ship like this, it's very easy to do everything except slow down. So instead of trying to keep up, I came here with one goal. I wanted to see if it was actually possible to relax on one of the world's busiest cruise ships. As soon as you step on board, the first thing you notice isn't any one attraction, it's the movement. People heading in every direction all at once, music bleeding from one venue into the next, and kids sprinting past with giggles and big plans. There's screens flashing showtimes, activities, and reminders that something else is always starting somewhere else. And for a minute, it feels like this ship is daring you to keep up. I caught myself doing that thing we all do on short cruises, mentally stacking plans, what we should see, what we shouldn't miss, and what we'd regret not doing once we got home. And that's when it hit me. If I tried to do this cruise the usual way, I was going to spend the whole trip reacting to it instead of enjoying it. So I stopped chasing the schedule and made the decision to be intentional about slowing down my pace. And instead of asking what was happening next, I started looking for places where nothing was happening at all. And that's when this ship started to feel very different. Oh, and if we haven't met yet, I'm Evan from Family at Sea. If this is your first time watching my channel, I'm glad you're here. And if you've already been here a while, you know how much I appreciate you. If you're ready, I am. Let's go. Embarkation wastes no time setting expectations. From the moment we dropped our bags with a luggage porter to our first steps on the ship took less than 20 minutes with no buildup, no friction, and no sense of easing into the experience. And then suddenly you're on this ship. You board the Wonder of the Seas directly into the Royal Promenade on Deck 5, and it's hard not to pause for a second as the space opens up and you're dropped straight into the middle of the action. The scale hits you fast, and then the energy. People are pouring in from every direction. Crew members are already pitching drink packages and specialty dining, and music is playing across the promenade. Screens are flashing. Everyone is exploring everything all at once. And this is the first moment you really understand what kind of cruise this might be. One deck up on deck 6, the boardwalk feels like an extension of that energy. You've got a carousel, aqua theater views, casual dining, families everywhere, and that constant sense of movement. It's fun, it's loud, and it's very much on. Two decks higher on deck 8, Central Park changes the tone completely with real plants, open air walkways, and specialty dining tucked into quieter corners. You can still feel the ship around you, but the pace slows down just enough to breathe. And head all the way to the top of the ship, and the contrast sharpens again. The main pool deck is busy, crowded, and at times chaotic, with kids filling every square inch of the hot tubs, lines of people all fighting for a drink, and the sun all competing for attention all at the same time. Keep moving aft to the sports zone on deck 16, and the spectacle takes over with the Flow Rider, the Ultimate Abyss dry slide, and activities stacked on top of activities. And at this point, the ship's personality is clear. The Wonder doesn't try to ease you in, it throws everything at you from the moment you step on board the ship. But the question is whether somewhere inside all of this, there's room to step back, or if you're meant to keep moving the entire time. And once you start getting your bearings on the ship, the next thing that quietly shapes the experience is the price. Not because expensive cabins are nicer, but because on a ship this big, the price determines how much friction you run into every day. On short sailings especially, everything is compressed. And so that means you have thousands of people on one of the world's largest cruise ships who all want to see and do everything there is to see and do before the cruise is over, which means there's less time to spread out and more competition for the same spaces. And you'll feel that even more on the 3-day sailings over the weekends than you will on the 4-day sailings during the week. It's only one more day, but it makes a big difference in the frantic sort of energy you'll run into on the ship. And the crazy thing is, the 3-day sailings often end up being more expensive than the 4-day sailings, since they're over the weekend, which means people have to use less vacation time at work and there's more demand for the limited space. But to give you realistic ballpark pricing, you're typically looking in the 400 to 600 per night price range for 2 people in a balcony cabin on the Wonder. Interior cabins can dip as low as $275 per night, while the top end star class suites push well beyond $3,000 per night. And this is where people get tripped up with cruise pricing. With fares constantly changing, it's incredibly easy to overpay without even realizing it. One sailing looks expensive, another looks like a deal, and suddenly you're clicking a flash sale banner hoping you timed it right. And that's exactly why we Book Through Cruises it. Instead of guessing, you're working with people who actually understand the ships, the pricing patterns, and how different cabins change the onboard experience. They've saved us thousands over the years, helped us land better cabins, and kept us from making choices we would have regretted later. Which is more than I can say for Frank, who once called me thrilled about a strategic upgrade that turned out to be strategically located next to a service door that slammed every 6 minutes. Frank, if the listing promises easy access, you should probably ask what the easy access is for. With their low price guarantee and people who actually care, Cruises It makes booking simpler, cheaper, and a whole lot less stressful. So click the link in the description below or call the number on the screen and tell them Evan from Family at Sea sent you. You'll be glad you did. Our experience on the Wonder of the Seas was split across 2 sailings. Once on a 4-night sailing in a Central Park interior, and again on a 3-night sailing in an ocean view stateroom with large balcony. Both cabins were designed to sleep 4, and in practice they handled that pretty well. There's a queen-size bed for the adults and a sofa bed with a trundle that pulls out from underneath to create 2 separate sleeping spaces for the kids. It's far from spacious, but it gets the job done. The decor is modern Royal Caribbean with neutral tones, light woods, and clean lines, and it's nothing flashy, but nothing feels dated either. Storage was adequate, but not generous, with a couple closet bureaus that give you enough space to unpack for a few days without issue, but these weren't rooms that leave you space to spread out. Drawers fill up quickly and closet space is shared carefully, but it works as long as everyone keeps their space clean. The bathrooms were compact but functional, with a walk-in shower with good water pressure, consistent temperatures, and enough shelf space to get through the week without juggling toiletries every morning. Now, there's no luxury touches here, but nothing that felt cheap or frustrating either. The biggest difference between the 2 cabins, though, wasn't actually inside the room, it was what happened outside of it. The 3-night sailing was noticeably louder, with more weekend energy, more drinking, and more kids running the halls. Late at night, it wasn't unusual to hear shouting, laughter, or people talking loudly as they passed by. Or like last night, the kids that knocked on my door and I heard running down the hall. And unfortunately, that kind of noise just comes with the territory on shorter sailings on pretty much any cruise line. The balcony cabin didn't really feel bigger inside, but it did change how we used the room a bit. Being able to step outside in the morning or late at night gave us a private escape that didn't involve navigating crowded public spaces. But it wasn't about the view as much as the separation. A few minutes outside made a noticeable difference when the ship felt loud or busy. Neither cabin felt luxurious, but they did feel thoughtfully designed for how people actually use their rooms. And on a ship like this, that matters. Because when everything outside your door is competing for attention, the value of a cabin isn't how impressive it looks, it's how well it works when you need it to. Walking around the Wonder of the Seas, you start asking a simple question pretty quickly. How does a ship this big actually work? At 237,000 gross tons and carrying nearly 7,000 guests, it can't rely on one central space without everything breaking down. And you feel that immediately, as nothing is trying to pull everyone in the same direction. Instead, the ship spreads people out into different areas almost without you even noticing. Central Park is the first place where that really begins to click. Even on a full sailing, this area never feels rushed. People aren't passing through, they're lingering. The greenery softens the space, the walkways are wide, and energy stays low key even when busy. During the day, it's calm, and at night, the lighting changes, live music drifts through the space, and the whole area invites you to slow down. A couple of decks below, the boardwalk answers a very different need. There, you'll find movement and noise by design. The Aqua Theater pulls your attention to the aft with rock climbing walls that frame the space, a carousel that spins in the center, and families that cycle through all day. It's loud, but it's contained, and the layout here gives all that energy and activity a place to live without taking over the rest of the ship. But up on the pool deck, the scale finally feels unavoidable. There's multiple pools, water slides, splashaway bay for the kids, bars, and the buffet all competing for attention all at once. At peak times, especially around lunch, it's busy to the point of feeling completely chaotic. But even here, the ship gives you choices with multiple levels, shaded seating, and wide walkways which make it easy to maneuver without feeling like you're playing a real-life version of Frogger. You 80s babies know what I'm talking about. Just past the main pool deck is the solarium. As you pass through the glass doors from the pool deck into this space, you notice the shift in energy immediately. It's adults only, spread across multiple levels with pools and hot tubs and seating that doesn't just funnel everyone into one focal point. People settle in, conversations quiet down, and even on busy days, it feels removed from the chaos without feeling hidden. And at the aft of the top deck, the sports zone leans fully into the spectacle with the flow rider challenging you to ride their waves and the ultimate abyss dry slide sending you cascading down 10 decks to try the boardwalk, and even a zip line that sends you flying across the ship from 8 decks up. This is not where you come to relax, and it doesn't pretend to be. It exists so the rest of the ship doesn't have to absorb that energy. By the time you've walked the ship a few times, a pattern starts to emerge. The Wonder definitely doesn't try to calm everyone down, but it does give people options. Energy over here, a bit of quiet over there, and enough space between them that you're not forced into either one. And on a ship carrying this many people, that isn't accidental. It's the only way relaxing is even possible. Food and drink on the Wonder works the same way the rest of the ship does. There isn't a single correct choice, but instead, it gives you plenty of options depending on your mood. The main dining room is the backbone with its classic cruise dining, multiple levels, rotating menus, and a predictable rhythm. It's where you go when you want a sit-down meal without overthinking it, and on a ship this size, that consistency matters. Central Park is where dining slows down. 150 Central Park is intimate and quiet and built around tasting menus and pacing rather than volume. Giovanni's Italian kitchen brings energy into the neighborhood with big portions and family-style Italian comfort food. Park Cafe fills the gaps during the day with quick sandwiches and snacks without pouring you into the buffet chaos. And Chops Grill is the steakhouse with all the menu options you'd expect served with an upscale feel. Up on deck 16, Hooked is a classic seafood spot offering a quieter, more traditional dining experience perched above the solarium with a menu built around familiar seafood favorites. And then there's Wonderland, which is an adventure all of its own. The food here really isn't anything special, but the entire experience is themed around Alice in Wonderland, with the Mad Hatter being the star of the show. Izumi Abachi turns the energy back up fast with its loud, interactive, and social meals where they fire up a grill and cook right in front of you as they entertain you with jokes and karaoke without the soundtrack. And then there are places that quietly keep the ship moving. Playmakers is a full-on sports bar which is busy during the games and high energy most of the time. Johnny Rockets is familiar and predictable where you can grab yourself a burger or any of your classic American diner options. When all else fails, the Windjammer Buffet is where you go for something quick and easy if you're okay with navigating a bit of chaos in the process as you try to dodge people while you fill your plate and find a table. And then there's grab-and-go spots like El Loco Fresh with its Mexican options, the Dog House where you can go to grab a sausage or a hot dog, and Sorrento's Pizza that do more heavy lifting than people realize by letting you eat quickly without committing to a whole production. And the bars and lounges follow a similar pattern. The bionic bar is a bar where your drinks are made by robotic arms, and it's fun to watch once, but the novelty fades quickly and it's not a spot where you'll linger long. Boleros keeps things lively and social with their Latin music and dancing. The lime and coconut bars are pure pool deck energy with various spots scattered across decks 15 and 16, and the rising tide bar turns movement itself into entertainment as it floats between the Royal Promenade on deck 5 and Central Park on deck 8. But the ship also leaves room to step away from the energy if you know where to look. Schooner Bar feels classic and it's helped by the piano and a slower pace. The Cask and Clipper and Giovanni's Wine Bar are easy places to sit without competing with a DJ, and Spotlight Karaoke pulls energy into one contained space instead of spreading it everywhere. And the Trellis Bar in Central Park and the View Bar outside the Solarium reward people who wander a little farther. And then, of course, there's the Wonderland Bar and the Solarium bars that are great quiet escapes later in the evening when much of the ship feels turned up. And that pattern keeps showing up as there's almost always a loud option nearby. But there's also usually a quieter one just a short walk away. And on a ship carrying 7,000 people, that balance is what keeps food and drinks from adding friction instead of becoming part of how you actually slow things down. Entertainment is one of the places where the wonder of the seas really shows its confidence. Nothing feels experimental or like it's just filling a space because the ship knows exactly what it's good at and it leans into that. The Aqua Theater show Intense sets the tone immediately. With its all-female cast and constant motion and high diving that keeps you leaning forward in your seat, the choreography feels impossibly precise for a space exposed to wind and water. It's the kind of show where you stop thinking about where you are and you just watch. Royal Caribbean figured out the Aqua Show formula years ago, and this is a reminder of why it still works. The Ice Show, 365 seasons on ice, delivers a very different kind of spectacle with its melodic, visually polished, and surprisingly emotional show. And in the Royal Theatre, the Effectors 2 is where the production scale really shows up, with big sets, strong visuals, and a cast that commits fully to their characters. I wasn't expecting much from a production show with superheroes, but I walked away truly impressed by just how good this show was. Comedy lives in the attic, and that intimacy works in its favor with a smaller room, tighter crowd, and a much better energy than you'd get trying to drop stand up into a massive venue. The show's filled up quickly, which tells you everything you need to know. And then there's everything happening in between. The music hall stays busy most nights with different bands on different nights and theme sets that give the ship a real nighttime pulse. There's live music pop-ups everywhere from piano at the schooner bar to roaming musicians and small ensembles tucked in the lounges across the ship. And the Royal Promenade never really turns off, with parades, pop-up performances, and surprise moments that keep that space feeling alive. Sometimes it's loud and at other times it leans a bit more chaotic, but it's always engaging. For the most part, the entertainment there is the type you stumble across instead of planning around. But what stands out most is how distributed everything is. Big shows pull big crowds into theaters on purpose. Music and comedy spread people out, and the Royal Promenade events absorb energy instead of letting it bottleneck elsewhere. Now, on a ship carrying 7,000 guests, that matters. And by the end of the sailing, it's become clear that entertainment on the Wonder isn't just about impressing you. It's about managing flow. And that's why even on one of the world's largest cruise ships, it rarely feels crowded. Service on the Wonder of the Seas was consistently strong on both sailings. Crew members were friendly, patient, and steady even during peak times. Bars stayed staffed, dining kept moving, and no matter how busy things got, the crowd never felt rattled. And on a ship carrying 7,000 guests, that alone is impressive. But what changed dramatically wasn't the service, it was the crowd. The 3-night sailing over the weekend felt like a nonstop party from the moment I stepped on board. There were thousands of kids, packed schedules, heavy drinking, and a constant sense that everyone was trying to fit everything in all at once. The hallways stayed loud late into the night, bars were busy from afternoon onward, and the energy never really dipped. It wasn't bad, but it was relentless. But the 4-night Christmas sailing felt completely different. There were just as many families on board, but the tone shifted with less rushing, fewer late night hallway stampedes, and a shift toward parents and families slowing down, spending time together, and treating the cruise like a shared experience instead of a sprint. The ship still felt full, but it felt calmer and more intentional, and that contrast really stood out. The shorter weekend sailings tend to attract a crowd that wants to maximize every hour, and the wonder amplifies that energy. Longer sailings, even when it's only one extra day, give people permission to breathe a little. Now, I'll say this, through both experiences, the crew carried the ship. They adapted to the energy in front of them without letting it spill over, and the service stayed friendly and interactions stayed positive even when dealing with rude guests. And they ensured the atmosphere never tipped into feeling out of control. By the end of both sailings, the takeaway was clear. The wonder doesn't create the vibe, it reflects it. And depending on when you sail, that reflection can feel like a floating party or a surprisingly calm space for families to make memories together. And that difference matters more than most people expect. By the end of both sailings, one thing became very clear. The 4 day sailing was without a doubt the better experience, and it wasn't particularly close. In fact, I don't think I'll do a 3 day sailing on the Wonder again. There's simply too much packed into a ship this size to squeeze it into a long weekend without everything feeling rushed. The 3 day sailing felt frantic, like we were constantly choosing what to skip instead of enjoying what we were doing. The 4 day gave the ship room to breathe, and that made all the difference, not only for our schedule, but also for the feel of the ship. And if you're short on time and only planning to see one or two shows, here's how I prioritize them. Surprisingly, Effectors 2 comes first. It's the best non-Broadway production show I've seen on Royal Caribbean, and next would be the intense Aqua Show. There's never a time that I walk away from an Aqua Show on a Royal Caribbean that I'm not amazed at what I just saw. But there are better versions of this show that you can see on other ships. And then 365 Seasons on Ice. It's polished and a good show and absolutely worth seeing if you can fit it in. But if you've got to make a sacrifice, that's the one I would pass on. And another tip, and this is one that I already know, but it may help you. Do the Mason Jar Brunch on Embarkation Day. It's right next to the chaos of the Windjammer, but it feels like a different world entirely, with a great menu, solid drinks, and a calm way to start the cruise when everything else is turned up to 11. One more tip there, order yourself a Howdy Partner. It is the best drink on Royal Caribbean, and you can thank me later. It's fantastic. All right, and one other thing. On port days, Park Cafe is your friend. When options are limited and the buffet feels especially crowded, it's an easy alternative for a quick lunch without the stress. Looking back, this ship reminded me that relaxing on the world's busiest cruise ships isn't about avoiding the action. It's about understanding how the ship works, choosing your moments, and giving yourself enough time to enjoy it. And that really got me thinking about what cruise I want to book next, because some are absolutely worth booking a second time, but some I will never book again. So don't stop here. Check out that video next where I break down all the cruise ships I'd sail again in a heartbeat and which ones I will definitely skip, even at the right price. I'll see you over there. If you're ready, I am. Let's go.